When Master Rule 5 was first announced, us TCG players did not really know when it would actually hit our format. Luckily, within a couple days, maybe not even 24 hours, Konami posted a video announcing that the TCG and the OCG would both get these ruling changes on the same day, April 1st. This is pretty exciting, but at that time, it still seemed pretty far off. However, as I mentioned in last week's video, I said Master Rule 5 is less than 1 month away, which is really insane, but in today's video, I'm going to tell you guys Master Rule 5 isn't just less than 1 month away, it's actually less than 3 weeks away. The game as we know it, the format entirely, is just going to change once Master Rule 5 hits. And I've seen a lot of different discussions about this change, because now you don't need link monsters to summon your synchros or exceeds or fusion monsters, which is awesome, but I've seen some people posting things along the lines of, well, link monsters are just going to be gone from competition entirely. I do not think this is true, and in today's video, I want to focus on 5 very powerful, mostly generic link monsters that will definitely still see play after Master Rule 5. I say mostly generic because while 2 of these are technically part of an archetype, they are able to be played in plenty of other strategies. We're not focusing on archetypal link monsters that are specifically made for their own themes. The reason is that any deck that has a really powerful link monster that works with that actual strategy is obviously still going to play it after Master Rule 5. These ones are a lot more generic and can be played in a lot of different decks, not just their own specific archetype. As always, if you guys like to purchase any of the cards that I talk about in today's video to prepare yourself for when Master Rule 5 actually goes into effect, please use my link in the description below to tcgplayer.com. A portion of those sales go right back into the channel. First up, we have the Nightmare monsters, so Phoenix and Cerberus and Unicorn and maybe even Griffin. All of these cards will likely still be really solid after Master Rule 5. While rank 4 toolbox decks might show up more in competition, we already sort of see that with Lunalights, but it'll probably be even more all over the place once Master Rule 5 goes into effect. These 3 Nightmare cards, specifically Unicorn, Phoenix, and Cerberus, they are incredibly versatile and basically any deck can make them. For example, Unicorn is basically just a better Castell in a lot of situations. Sure, it takes more materials and you have to discard a card, but shuffling back anything, not just face-up cards, is a huge advantage. Phoenix and Cerberus actually get even better under Master Rule 5, because now if you summon them to the extra monster zone, because remember that links still need to follow that rule, you no longer are locked out of summoning your synchros, exceeds, or fusions, because you can just summon those to the main monster zone even without a downward pointing arrow. That is a pretty big deal, and it makes me think that Phoenix especially, because that card is by far the most popular Nightmare monster, will still see play after the Master Rule change, just because it's the easiest way for many strategies, almost all strategies, to deal with opposing back row from the extra deck. Remember, part of the advantage of extra deck monsters like Phoenix and Unicorns that it means you don't have to play so many back row removal options in your main deck especially. Those sort of cards can be used whenever you need them as long as you have the monsters on board to take out opposing back row really easily. It's possible that rank 4 decks will just play Tornado Dragon instead of playing Nightmare Phoenix, but I still think that Phoenix will be the more popular choice just because it is so darn easy to make and you don't need 2 level 4s, so if you brick and end on an awkward hand and you have like a level 3 and a level 5 or a level 3 and a level 4, you can still make the Phoenix. I just think these cards overall are going to be really strong even with Master Rule 5. And number 4 we have Cross Cheap, and this is by far my favorite card from Ignition Assault. Believe it or not, I like this card even more than Lightning Storm because Cross Cheap is a link monster that was printed to help out so many different Synchro, Fusion, and Exceeds monster decks. This Link 2 monster is extremely easy to summon, just as easy as the Nightmares. It only takes 2 monsters with different names, so just any 2 different monsters. It says if a monster is special summoned to a zone this card points to, and it has 2 arrows that are both downward pointing, which is super valuable, you can apply the following effects in sequence based on the card types of monsters this card points to. If you have a ritual that it points to, you get to draw 2 cards and discard 2 cards, so kind of fix your hands. If you have a fusion, which is what right now at least it's being used for a lot, you get to special summon a level 4 or lower monster from your graveyard, which is fantastic. If you have a synchro, you get to boost all of your monsters by 700 attack, and if you have an exceeds, you get to make all of your opponent's monsters lose 700 attack. Those are insanely powerful, and if we see more sort of hybrid decks in the upcoming months because of Master Rule 5, you might be able to trigger like 2 of those effects at one time. You know, if you have a fusion and a synchro that it points to, you get to make all of your stuff gain 700 and revive a monster. Pretty darn insane. Cross Cheap Hype is already fantastic, and if you don't have it already, you probably should pick yours up, but especially once Master Duel 5 goes into effect, this thing is going to be all over the place. No, you don't necessarily need it for the arrows themselves anymore, because you can summon the Synchros, Exceeds, and Fusions to wherever you want, and obviously rituals are not extra deck monsters, so those were never restricted, but the sheer amount of value that this one Link monster can give any deck playing a Synchro, Fusion, Exceeds, or Ritual monster is just completely off the charts, so I expect this card to be a mainstay in competitive Yu-Gi-Oh! For quite a while. At number 3, we have Borel Sword Dragon, everyone's favorite card to OTK their opponents with. This card is insanely powerful. It can attack twice if you switch a monster to defense position, it gains attack points when it attacks an opponent's monster, and it's just overall a very solid choice. You guys probably already know this because it's all over tournaments, and it has been pretty much ever since it was released. And under Master Duel 5, this card will still remain a very solid option for beating your opponent in one turn through a variety of different strategies that can OTK using Borel Sword Dragon. Sure, for rank 4s you have Utopia Double, but then you have to play Double or Nothing, which you might not want to. In Synchros, they don't really have a card like this. I mean, Chainbara is kind of like this, but that's only a level 5 Synchro that not every deck can actually make. So overall, I think Borel Sword Dragon will still be a very popular choice. Rank 4 decks might just play that Utopia Double, but I think that even some rank 4 strategies will like the ease of use of Borel Sword Dragon and the fact that you can summon it when you need it and not have to worry about playing that Double or Nothing and actually drawing it, ruining your combo. So I think this card is going to be really good in the coming months. Borel Low Dragon also, I can just give a quick shout out here, will be really good as well for stealing opposing monsters that you normally wouldn't be able to deal with. Once again, both of these cards do things as Link monsters that a lot of Synchro and Exceeds monsters simply cannot compete with. Speaking of Link monsters that do things that the average Synchro or Exceeds monster could not do, let's talk about Palooza Bow of the Goddess. Admittedly, this is not a budget-friendly card. It is the most expensive card in this video, but if you can afford it, you definitely should be playing it if your deck can actually make Link 4s on turn 1. Palooza is insanely powerful, giving you multiple negates on boards that otherwise maybe wouldn't have negations. A lot of the time, even if your combo gets stopped as a combo player, you are still able to make an Palooza with a few negates. Is that as good as your full combo board? I mean, not really, but it still is really solid. The reason this card will still see play after Master Duel 5 is because there is not really a Synchro or Exceeds monster that's easy to summon that you can negate as many cards as you could with the Palooza. This thing is a Light and Darkness Dragon, which used to be a very powerful level 8 monster that people used to tribute to monsters to summon and win games off of. This is basically the same thing, which you don't have to use your tribute summon for it. Yes, you do have to get rid of monsters on your board, but as I kind of mentioned with the Nightmare monsters, having an option in your extra deck is always preferable to playing a main deck card that you sometimes don't want to draw. You can summon the Palooza only when you actually need to, and you don't ever have to dead draw it like you would with Light and Darkness Dragon. I'm sure I don't have to tell you that because Light and Darkness Dragon has not been good for a very long time, but what I'm trying to say here is that it's not really a Synchro, at least not a generic Synchro or Exceeds monster that does what Palooza does, at least not as easily. Lastly, we have the closest thing to a true sort of archetype card on this list, and that is Curious, the Lightsworn Dominion. Now, the reason that I say this is the closest thing to an archetype card is that even though the Nightmares are part of an archetype, it's not really the more conventional themes that we think about, but this is very obviously a Lightsworn card, which is a real archetype that has topped events. But I think when people are thinking of Curious, the Lightsworn Dominion right now, they're not really talking about Lightsworns. You know, that deck has been out of the meta for quite some time now. Even with Minerva, it's still not quite good enough right now, at least. It's a Lavalva chain that mills 3 more additional cards, and also if your opponent manages to get rid of it, you get to add any card in your graveyard to your hand for free. While initially, I think a lot of people were scared off by the summoning requirements, the danger monsters, not just those ones, but mainly the danger monsters, make this thing very easy to summon in a variety of strategies. You just need to summon 2 danger monsters and then any level 1 monster and make a Link Creepo. That usually gets to this in a lot of different decks, like Spirals, they sometimes do that. But just in general, if you're playing dark monsters and you summon a couple dangers, you can summon Curious pretty darn easily and set up your bigger combos. This thing is going to be really solid in Master Duel 5 because Lavalva Chain is still banned. If that card was legal, then maybe they both would honestly be played in the same deck, but at least Chain might be considered sometimes over this one in rank 4 strategies. But because Chain is still banned, this is basically your only option for an extra deck monster that's generic to summon in most cases and can mill a card from your deck. And that's really, really good. People are still going to want to play Curious, even if it's not as popular as it has been in the past when we saw dangers in every single deck. It's still likely going to be really, really solid going forward. Right now we see it in a lot of Spiral strategies, especially the version that plays Scrap Recycler and Scrap Wyvern and Golem and all those cards. In that deck, it is part of the central combo for that strategy. You can send the Trap to the grave, you can send Master Plan to the grave, you can send all sorts of stuff to start your combo. Curious is a card that is basically irreplaceable, so it's still going to see play under Master Rule 5, and as a very cheap to pick up super rare, if you don't have your copy by now, you probably might as well pick up one just in case. Anyway though, hope you guys enjoyed today's discussion video on 5 Link monsters that will still be great after Master Rule 5. I think that there are even more cards that I could have talked about, even generic ones. I mean, you saw me insert Borel as a real quick sort of nod to another card that's really, really solid that wasn't on my original list, but overall there is just a lot of great Link monsters even once Master Rule 5 goes into effect. There are a lot of really good Link monsters that are good not just because of their arrows, but because of their actual effects, and those are the ones that are likely still going to see play once April 1st rolls around. Anyway though, thank you guys so much for watching the discussion video. I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.